Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is leading aircraftman Brendan Lucan. We're honoured to acknowledge the dignitaries of the Australian Ibero-American Business Council, who join us this evening to commemorate the centenary of the First World War and the role that each country played during that conflict. We're also honoured to welcome Major General Ivan Jones, Director General of Personnel in the British Army, and the accompanying delegation. We also warmly welcome former Minister of Parliament, Mr. Alastair Webster. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors and students on behalf of the following schools. From New South Wales, Penrith South Public School, St Patrick's Primary School, Lochinvar, Pacific Palms Public School, Boomerang Beach. I invite you all to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Students, you may be seated. If there's anyone else that's able to be seated, please do so. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection in the following order. The ambassadors to Australia from Costa Rica, Spain and Peru. The ambassadors to Australia from Argentina and Ecuador. The ambassadors to Australia from Chile and Colombia. The chargé d'affaires to Australia from Venezuela and El Salvador. The chargé d'affaires to Australia from Uruguay and Brazil. The chargé d'affaires to Australia from Portugal and Guatemala. Representatives from the following embassies: Paraguay, Mexico, accompanied by the Honourable Stuart Robert, Assistant Treasurer, Australian Federal Parliament. Major General Ivan Jones, Director General of Personnel in the British Army. Dr. Brendan Nelson, Director of the Australian War Memorial, and former Minister of Parliament, Mr. Alastair Webster.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Flight Sergeant Walter Noel Pridmore. Pridmore was born in Adelaide on the 25th of December 1923, the son of Henry Pridmore and Lily May Pridmore. Known to his family by his middle name, Noel, Pridmore attended the local school before going to work as a clerk for the South Australian Gas Company. On the 12th of September 1942, Pridmore enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force and began training as a bomb aimer. After his initial training in Australia, he embarked for overseas service. As part of the Empire training scheme, he was one of almost 27,500 RAAF pilots, navigators, wireless operators, gunners and engineers who, throughout the course of the war, joined Royal Air Force squadrons or Australian squadrons based in Britain. Arriving in Britain, Pridmore undertook specialist training before he was posted to No. 12 Squadron, Royal Air Force, in late February 1945. As part of the Royal Air Force's Bomber Command, No. 12 Squadron was equipped with 4-engine Avro Lancaster heavy bombers. On the night of the 3rd to the 4th of March 1945, Pridmore was the bomb aimer in a Lancaster that was undertaking a training flight over England when it was shot down by an enemy intruder near Stockwith, Lincolnshire. Pridmore and all 6 of his crewmates were killed. They were fellow Australians, Flight Sergeant Ronald Horsterman, Flight Sergeant George Davis, Flight Sergeant Alan Cryer, and Flight Sergeant Alexander Weston. With them were British crewmates, Pilot Officer Arthur Thomas and Flight Sergeant Thomas McCaffrey. Walter Pridmore was 21 years old. The bodies of the crew were recovered from the crash, and Pridmore and his Australian crewmates were buried side by side in the RAF plot at Cambridge City Cemetery. Walter Pridmore's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, amongst almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed beside the pool of reflection. This is one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Flight Sergeant Walter Noel Pridmore, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, or the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. Please feel free to visit the poppy display in the grounds as you leave. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.